the future, the newspaper of the future. Don't say, and it always will be. We'll be wise guys. So representing, we have a number of different models, business models presented here. We have the independent press. That's Michael Shapiro's company. That's the alternativepress.com as an example of that. We have a combination, print and digital, NewYorkTimes.com. Corporate, the big corporate sponsor, the so-called 700-pound gorilla, the Patch AOL. We have my little thing that I'm involved in. We have a dues and donations supported HardingOnline.com, a little community out in New Jersey. Probably the longest running citizen-supported journal. It started in papers, we're not sure when, 1970-ish. That's how I'm interested in this, and also as an investor, I was looking at AOL. But so that's a whole different one. We have $23,000 in revenues, and everything else is free. Foundations, also something I'm somewhat involved in. Foundations and nonprofits. The Center for Civic Responsibility, a group that's kind of a clean government, get citizens involved, grassroots group to get citizens involved in New Jersey. They are sponsoring seeding hyperlocal journals in Paterson, which is a place nobody wants to go as a profit making. We got that going. And we're starting one in New Brunswick any day now. And then other hyperlocal media kinds of things, of course, your public access stations. Let's take just back up for a second. Let's look at newspapers and what they do, and how some of what they do has been scraped away, as it were, by other kinds of things. On the news and government, schools, sports, business, a lot of those guys have their own sites. There's lots of information there that they're putting out. Do they have the traffic to get in front of people, et cetera, et cetera? Not necessarily. For idea kinds of things, letters to the editors and opinions, there's people blogging all over the place, and some of them even eventually sell out. Advertising, notice where the big money first went, the names you recognize, are Craigslist, eBay, that's going to say central listing. Sorry, I forgot to fix that slide. And Facebook, Twitter, Groupon. So the big names went right for where the money is. And then special interests kinds of stories you see in a newspaper, or people and clubs and civic organizations all running their own sites. And then let's not forget the virtuous circle of media, where good content draws more eyeballs, which draws advertising, which allows you to fund better content and get more eyeballs and sell more advertising, and it's virtuous. So keying off that, let's think about some of the problems in the hyperlocal, because they've been around and they're not taking off as fast as Groupon, say, or anything else. Problem number one, if you read about all this stuff, is the content. It's uneven, I guess is the polite way you could say it. They'll say the editor is clearly key. A passionate, informed editor that can herd the cats of the journalists. The citizen journalists often have passion, but they're often not constant. They get in there involved in one thing on the school board, write it up, and then get kind of exhausted and bag it. So you have continuous churn, and you have the problem of how to pay them. If you don't get it going, then how do you pay them and keep the virtuous circle going? So that's a big problem I'd like to talk about, have our panelists talk about. A potential solution, there are some solutions here. Different organizations, the handbook for citizen journalists, that's the one put out by the group I told you I was involved in, teaches journalists that are covering government about the various centers of power in a community. School board, planning board, town council, and the hidden one is the parties in a town. Very powerful. People don't know about this. So there's 3 branches of government at the federal level. I dare say if you did a survey of people at the civic level, at the municipal level, they would have no idea. Those are your 3 big levers of power. Anyway, we train people on how to that. We'll be happy to train citizen journalists in this. Just a week ago tomorrow, we gave a class for how to cover a school board budget. I thought I knew how to do that. I'd been doing it for 2 years in my little town. Went to this thing at the Rutgers School of Journalism this group put on. I just got 6 pages of notes. My hand was aching, and I just learned all this stuff. And I'm a financial analyzer, so it's to do it right, to get the content as good as it needs to be. It's quite difficult. New York Times Knowledge Network is an online course, And if you want to know about, by the way, the last thing here, if you want to know about what works and what doesn't, there's one thing maybe to take away is write that down, www.kcnn.org. There's a report that the Knight Group did about what works and what doesn't. They funded 40 some of these things and wrote a report over the last 2 years of what worked and what didn't. Very, very interesting. Passionate editor works and some of the other things. Technology is not a big deal. If anybody gets tired, if you spend eight of the first 10 months worrying about technology, you did something wrong, you just buy that off the shelf. Is one of the things they said. But all kinds of great advice like that. You're interested in starting one of these. Okay, back to the problems. Oops, that was a training. Big problem number 2, advertising sales. Remember I said it was content, eyeballs, advertising. It's a pretty simple business, if you think about it, for in a single site. So how do you sell to the local florist? Not very exciting. You don't go into PowerPoint, you walk in, and while making flowers, you say, would you like to advertise? Nice thing about it is they don't know CPMs, they're not very sophisticated. The bad thing about it is when the customers start trading down from 12 roses to 12 carnations, they go, I can cut this out easily because I'm not sure what good it did. So all kinds of marketing, guerrilla marketing, that's street fairs and block parties and clowns and balloons, speak to your Rotary Club, that sort of stuff. Another thing, if Groupon is taking a lot of the couponing and advertising out, is there a Groupon inside that you can put on a site? Well, answer is yes, there is, and people are doing that in the business. They all have to be commission-based, but there's the last problem. Oops, am I the wrong thing? Huh. The last thing is how do you find the killer producers? This is not a problem specific to hyperlocal journalism. This is a problem to a car dealership or General Electric. How do you find a good salesman? Ex ante, you can't tell. They've done study after study, you can't tell. It's not how they look, it's not how they talk, it's whatever. It's the guy that just won't give up. My favorite thing to think about in this is The Office. You've all seen the show The Office. Who is the #1 salesman in the office in the Scranton office of Dunder Mifflin? It's not cutesy Jim, it's not Phyllis, it's Dwight Schrute. You ever see him on the sales? He just will not stop. He is bulldog, fearless, and no shame. I think it's the critical one, no shame. If you walk in the floor and say, no, I don't think so. You can't, oh, I'm bummed out. Got to walk in and go into the pizza parlor and just walk out. And that's what it is. And finding those people, if you could figure out what that is for a hyperlocal, you'd be big. If you figure that out with any other business, you'd be big. But that's a huge problem. Problem number 3. So how do you sell the national brands if you're just doing a few communities or one in New Jersey? Well, AOL's strategy, of course, is to put together enough of these things, kind of like a string of billboards. If you own a great site for a billboard because you're the farmer and you used to have that, you have that land there right next to exit 32, it's not very easy for you to go to Cracker Barrel and say, I'll sell you this thing. You have to be part of a chain, and you work with Lamar or something like that. So they want a string of these things. So that's the idea of an AOL patch, all these patches, and I can offer a national advertiser billboard space, advertising space on a whole string of them. So if I'm a one-off city or a few cities, how do I duplicate that? Perhaps a confederation of them, much like a co-op does for the Wisconsin Cheese Council or something. A whole bunch of little dairy farmers, but they band together. So maybe is another way to skin that cat, and we don't have to give up. So these are some of the issues I hope our panelists will get into, and I'll turn it over to them in a second. But is it the time for hyperlocal news to be ripe or not? What services do consumers really want? What business models will prevail of those we talked about? How does journalism, or can journalism, compete with other hyperlocals for the eyeballs and the ad dollars? Technology, is there a way to leverage the problem of ad sales so it's not so labor intensive? Is there another way to leverage the content creation? Because content creation, I know from my dumb little newspaper and other people, is very, very difficult. It's a pain in the neck to sit there at a school board meeting for 3 hours and writing it up, or go around doing restaurant reviews. It just takes many hours. And then lastly, smartphones, tablets, all that, is that a big effect on the game? Or it's just another piece of hardware? Like you used to have cell phones, and they had landline phones, and not a huge difference, perhaps. So again, we have panelists. 3 of them with different models, and an expert in the subject matter. So with that, I will turn it over to Jim Schachter, Associate Managing Editor of the New York Times.
My approach, in all humility, since the theme of this is mainly about the business, is to say I'm an editor. While I have been part of an effort to assiduously find new ways to throw my head against the brick wall of hyperlocal business models, my expertise is on the journalism side, and I want to mainly talk about that. I want to call out somebody who's in the audience, Marianne Giordano, if you'd wave your hand. Marianne is the deputy metro editor here at the Times, who has had her hands directly all over our hyperlocal efforts, including the local in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Brooklyn, and the one that we previously ran in New Jersey, and the one that we currently have in the East Village. And I don't know if she's able to hang around later, but Marianne is the person to talk to if you actually want to know something, as opposed to hear babbling from people like me. I am a huge admirer of hers. So, very briefly, the New York Times' tour through this space began in out in the part of New Jersey that I live in Maplewood, Millburn, South Orange, in March 2 years ago. Basically, we and Patch started our hyperlocal efforts simultaneously. We actually sat with each other in a conference room here in this building, playing, how rude should I be? One of the sort of I'll show you mine if you'll show me yours games. And my favorite anecdote from those early launches that we were talking about, how did we each decide to launch our hyperlocal experiments in suburban Essex County, New Jersey. And I don't know whether it was Bill who answered the question or somebody else from Patch, but basically explained, as if you've read anything about Patch, that there is an algorithm that they put together with a whole bunch of inputs. And I'm not in any way mocking this, because I think it's the right way to have done it. Out came these towns as sort of model towns, right size, right level of affluence, right amount of commerce, right number of people, in civic engagement, and so on. And that's how they decided to start in those 3 towns. And then it was our turn to show ours, and we said, well, the Metro editor said that we could use this reporter, and she lives in Maplewood. And quite frankly, that roughly describes how the New York Times has gone about this versus how Patch and AOL have gone about this. For us, this is a journey of discovery. We continue to believe that there is real value to our organization in figuring out how to cover the news in communities down at the grassroots level in ways that we know we cannot do through the staff of the New York Times. The New York Times is a national and international organization. I hope that you've followed our coverage of what's going on in the Middle East and in Madison, Wisconsin over the last several weeks. That is the heart and soul of what the New York Times is. But the New York Times company it operates local news organizations around the country. And the New York Times has New York in its name and needs to come to grips with how do we stay relevant to our readers where they live, while at the same time we are engaged in the increasingly rare act of covering big news all over the world in an enterprising way. So we have decided it's important to keep our toe in this water, and that's exactly where we are. We have a local site in Brooklyn that, as you can see, we operate in collaboration with the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism that's a couple doors down. We have a local site in the East Village that we do in collaboration with the Arthur Carter Journalism Institute at NYU, which is their J school. And right now, that's what the New York Times is doing on a hyperlocal basis. The insight that I think that we have developed over the couple years that we've been working in this space is that there is whatever else there is in abundance on the web, there is a shortage of reporting. There is a shortage of reporting sort of at every level, but there is certainly a shortage of quality reporting about what's going on your block and in your neighborhood and in your community. I would argue that this has been true for a long time, that if there's a weekly paper in your town, how many editors of weekly newspapers are in the room? Okay. If there's a weekly newspaper in your town, it's probably pretty lousy. And it's probably full of press releases, and it probably finds ways to avoid the most important and controversial news because it's sort of the realtors have convinced the owner that it's bad for real estate sales in town. So I would say for a long time it's probably been the case that coverage of your community has been weak. But certainly today it is the case that reporting is in great shortage, which is why I am such a huge admirer of Patch and of the alternative press and others who have found ways and are taking the risk of putting people and money where their mouths are to create local reporting that hasn't existed before. The way we are undertaking to do this is to basically, because of what business the New York Times is in, which is not hyperlocal reporting, trying to experiment with this idea of trying to figure out what is the minimum amount of professional journalism that you can inject into a situation to make real reporting happen. By that I mean people going out and asking questions of people who don't want those questions asked of them and getting an answer and putting it out there for the community in a way that makes sense and is true and honest and not slanted by somebody's baggage that they bring to the table. So we are experimenting with doing that by working with, to multiply our forces through the agency of journalism professors and journalism schools and journalism students who we help train and who we give a format to work in. We work with the schools to go beyond that, to bring in members of their communities, the people who live in Fort Greene, the people who live in the East Village or operate businesses in those places or who are engaged in civic life in those places, and give them a forum not just to blather, mouth off, post their press releases, but to dig into issues, and we try to give them guidance in how to do that. We are learning how to train people in doing this. Some of that is from Marianne going into classrooms. Some of it is through the courses that she and others on our staff, people who build blogs, operate blogs, provide legal advice to our staff. These are the kind of people who we have doing online courses and offering them out both to the mom and pop who might be interested in operating a hyperlocal site, or if Gannett wanted to hire us to train their staff. Anybody here from Gannett? We would probably be willing to provide that service to them as well. But we're trying to be role models, we're trying to be mentors, we're trying to be teachers. Is this sustainable? I think I don't have answers to many of the questions that Stephen put up on the screen. They're the right questions. My hypothesis is that this is more sustainable if you do it through a combination of cold-blooded business and engaging people as citizens who want to make this their form of civic participation. That if people are willing, in Summit, New Jersey, the same people have been coaching the Little League teams for decades. Their kids have grown up and they don't play Little League anymore, and they still coach Little League. They're not bowling alone. They are participating. And I think that there are people who are just as you described in Harding, there are people who will do this. Will they burn out? Yes. So then we have to figure out how to work with people in a way that makes them want to continue, or show them how to train their successors. I think another insight that Marianne and I have developed is that there is an element of community organizing to this. If I don't mean to invoke President Obama or various communists of times past, but there is an element of community organizing to this that is different from what we have been trained to do as journalists, but that we need to those are muscles that we need to develop. There are new kinds of partnerships that we have to engage in, and this is all something that the New York Times certainly sees there being a virtue in learning more about. We will have more things to come on this front that look different from these sites. In the meantime, and I'm done, we have to wrestle with the kind of headlines that we're seeing this week. Massive investment by, a massive investment by All-Britain Communications, WJLA-TV, to create a hyperlocal site in Washington that they gave all of like 6 months to. And I would commend this story that walks through some of the business issues that the failure of TBD raises. Likewise, Alan Mutter, who's a very smart guy who writes about this, he's learned the lesson. That's what he put up today. More hype than hope for the news industry. I think that might end up being true if you look at it from a business perspective. I cannot accept that it's true if you look at it from what our society needs and what people want. And I have enough faith in things, and I'm an optimist enough to think that when there is a need, that we find a way to meet it. I think we're in the process of getting there now. Okay.
I'm Warren Webster, president of Patch.com. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. I had forgotten about that meeting that we had. It's funny, we weren't always in the corporate category. It was when we started Patch back in 2008. We were 10 guys locked up in a room for a year with old pizza boxes and a borrowed office uptown, trying to figure out how to solve this information problem. So when we finally launched our 3 first sites in Maplewood, South Orange, and Millburn, New Jersey, it came as quite a shock when we found out that, of all people, the New York Times were in the same towns. So we put on the suits, we dusted off the briefcases, and we went to see them. But we realized they were great people, and we've been friends ever since. So that was way before we were acquired by AOL in 2009. So is everyone familiar with Patch and what we do? Yeah, pretty much. Not everyone. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through just quickly how we came about and what we're doing now. We were founded in 2008 by Tim Armstrong, who at the time was the vice president of advertising for Google. And he was in his hometown in Connecticut looking for a place to volunteer with his family, and realized, going to the web as a Google guy, that there was not a lot of consistent information out there, a lot of the key information that you need to know about what organizations are doing, people that need volunteers. Looking deeper, he found that news coverage had really dwindled. And that just piqued his interest. Long story short, he hired me and the head of his investment company. We set about spending a year looking at every model that we possibly could for solving this problem. And we realized a few things. First, we realized that there's no substitute for actual feet-on-the-street journalism, that you really, as an internet company, can't take the approach that somehow you'll be able to pull all this information out of the air. So as much as we want to be the kind of company that looks for efficiency, and we are the kind of company that looks for efficiencies in technology and in every other possible way, the one thing that we will not skimp on is having a professional journalist in every town, someone who's passionate, as Jim was talking about where they live and what's going on there. So that was one of our key differentiators. We also looked at scale, and we knew that if we went into just New Jersey or a small area, it wouldn't open up the level of opportunities that it would if we really tried to go big with Patch. And to do that, we knew we needed a partner, and that's what led us to AOL, that and Tim Armstrong becoming the CEO and chairman of AOL. That was a nice coincidence. But AOL was the perfect partner because Tim was going in with a mission to turn that company around, become the leading provider of content online, and that was very much in line with our mission for Patch. So I'll just walk quickly through sort of what we are. Jim alluded to this. When we built the platform, we hired a bunch of ex-Google engineers. We wanted this to be the best local platform in the world. We realized that we could just turn it on anywhere. It wasn't a matter of technology about where we could be. It was a matter of what communities as a startup would give us the best chance of success. So we wanted to take a sort of half qualitative, half quantitative approach to how we selected these communities. We looked at all the data that was out there, and this is part of the problem. There isn't a lot of data about towns out there. The best that we could come up with was census data. So we took all 66,000 census tracts in America. We built an algorithm that weighted 59 different factors that we thought would be important for a hyperlocal site to be successful. Things ranging from the ranking of the local public high school, and we thought if a town has a very good local public high school, it probably has a very engaged group of parents. Voter turnout rates, we wanted to be in communities where people are very involved in politics and what's going on there. We looked at, as a business, we wanted to make sure there's a vibrant business community in the town. So we looked at number of businesses, the retail spend in the town, the average household income, and probably 45 other factors. We put every tract in America through this. That gave us a rank-ordered list of every community in the U.S. We then plotted it on a map. This graph shows sort of how it all ended up in terms of retail spend and household income. You can see Darien and New Canaan, two of our more successful towns, are up there on the upper right quadrant. It's interesting to note that all of our towns sort of spread very much in that higher income, higher retail spend. That was by design at first. And we also looked at population. So we felt that with one editor and a slew of freelancers, we could cover towns of about 15,000 population to about 100. And that's proved to be fairly accurate. So we plotted all the towns on the map, looked at clusters. We felt that for managing these kinds of sites, we would need a very hub and spoke type management system. So we ended up being very much around urban centers, starting in New Jersey and other suburbs of New York, like Connecticut and Long Island and Westchester, and then going out to Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, Boston, places like that. Let's see. So we set out, once we sold our company to AOL and joined that family, we set out on taking our company from 5 sites to hundreds. And how would we do that? One of the biggest challenges was finding really passionate, great local editors, because we knew, as Jim pointed out, that we can have the best technology in the world, we can have the best infrastructure and operation, but if we don't have that passionate, talented journalist in the town who cares every day about making sure the site is great, we will not succeed there. So we set out on probably what I would consider the most ambitious journalism hiring spree ever. We were the largest hirer of journalists in 2010, which is something we like to say a lot, but actually, every time I say it, it really means something to me, because I think it's so important in this day and age that as traditional media is shedding jobs, we are able to give jobs to journalists, both right out of journalism school and some who have 20, 25 years experience. And our editors do range. We hired 900 journalists in 2010. Among them, we have 7 Pulitzer Prize winners. The average experience is 6.6 years. 31% of them hold postgraduate degrees in journalism. Our regional editors, who oversee clusters of smaller sites, of local sites, average experience is 19 years at places like the New York Times and other news organizations. In fact, we have 2 of our local editors from New Jersey right there. Leah and Joshua, raise your hand so people can talk to you later. two of our passionate local editors right there. So this was our #1 challenge, and I think our #1 success to date is that we were able to find and hire that many fantastic journalists. Once we launched our first 3 sites, we were just overwhelmed by the response. We got thousands of emails from people all over the country saying that we've seen what you're doing in New Jersey and we want to work with you and try to launch sites in our communities. That sort of validated what we were doing. I think everyone in the room knows that the demand is there. It's more a question of how we do it. So scale really came into play as, that opens up things like distribution partnerships. And one of the ones we announced this year was Starbucks. So Starbucks is in virtually every town we're in, if not all. And they launched a new Starbucks digital network where when you go into a Starbucks and log into your free Wi-Fi, you get a dashboard of, I believe the Times is on there, the Wall Street Journal, there's some entertainment stuff, iTunes, and Patch was named the exclusive local provider in or next to any town that has a Patch, either now or going forward. So that was a big win for us. And just one of many ways that Patch wants to be platform agnostic, and with the scale that we have, we're able to do these kinds of distribution deals that give us even more reach everywhere we are, but very targeted local reach. So that's one example. We're also doing a lot in extending the brand and making sure that we're not just very focused on affluent suburban communities, but we're focused on other communities that make a ton of sense, and university communities are one of those. We've had, from the very beginning, a lot of interest from journalism schools and journalism professors, and certainly journalism students in what we're doing. And those relationships led to a program called Patch U. Most people say God bless you after I say that, but thank you. But we now have, I believe, 100 schools in the program, some of the best journalism schools in the country. We offer, through these programs, internships for journalism students to help write and contribute to the site, but also, I think, more importantly, help launch sites in the communities around the town and give them real-world experience, adds to the the programs that the journalism schools offer these students, and it's been a great program so far. From the very beginning, when Tim Armstrong sort of conceived the idea for Patch around volunteering in his town, we knew that we did not want to be the kind of company that just sort of swoops in, lands in a town, and does business there. It's important for us to really be a part of that community, and probably the most important way that you can be part of a community is by volunteering your time, money, and service to organizations in town and in the town. So we have a program called Give 5, where every employee of Patch gives 5 paid days a year to volunteer in their community at local nonprofits. And there's me loading some boxes into a food pantry truck. But it's turned out to be actually not just one of those things that we talk about at meetings, but actually a really core part of our DNA and a lot of fun too. Patch.org is a foundation that we formed that we announced when shortly after we had launched. You can see from our algorithm that we do serve very affluent communities that tend to have the same sort of profile. We've gone in a few cases into more urban areas, but we wanted to set up a foundation that would help get Patch into communities that wouldn't normally be commercially appealing to a media company and are largely ignored by media companies. So Patch.org is a way that we can work with community foundations across the country to launch Patch sites in urban or non-urban underserved neighborhoods. We're doing one sort of hybrid site with the City University of New York in Bed-Stuy in Brooklyn, and we're actively looking at partnerships through Patch.org and hope to launch more in the coming year. I talked about the response from the communities, which has been fantastic. Where we are today, so we went from those 3 sites in 2009 in New Jersey. The response was tremendous. We ended 2009 with 30 sites. Now we're at 791 sites, 18 states, and the District of Columbia. So we've launched fast. You can see we love graphs like this. The hockey stick, our monthly unique visitors have exceeded 4 million in December. So you can see here that Hyperlocal, when you add it together at scale, can become a real business from an audience standpoint. And here are just finally some stats. I talked about the sites. We've got an average household income of $105,000. We appeal slightly more to women. 75% are married, 42% have children in the household. We do a lot of our content programs outside of the hard news geared towards moms and women in general. And a great stat, as of now, Patch is producing a new piece of content every 15 seconds. And this isn't robo-content. This is an actual journalist or a freelancer uploading a piece of content to our site. So that's something we're very proud of. So that's Patch, and I'm looking forward to taking questions later. Thanks.
I'm Michael Shapiro. I am the CEO and founder of thealternativepress.com. And during our first year, which was 2008, we launched in October of 2008, we were cash flow positive. In our second year, which was last year, we were profitable. We're actually the only profitable hyperlocal represented on the panel here tonight. And I wanted to talk about how it started. Basically, I was a white-collar defense attorney in New York. And I grew up in Livingston, New Jersey. And my wife and I, we live in New Providence, New Jersey. And my son, pictured there, is now 4. And I'd always been really involved in the community, but I couldn't be because I was commuting back and forth to the city. I was working 15 hours a day, and I couldn't give back to the community. And I thought that that was going to be my lot in life because today most of my friends are still doing that. But I kind of had a life-changing moment, and that was that I guess it was in April of 2008, we found out that my son needed open heart surgery. And it really changed my life. And I said, well, what can I do with the skills I have that could really make a difference in the community, where I could do something I'd really like to do, and where I could actually see my wife and son? And so in October of 2008, we launched the Alternative Press in Summit, New Providence, and Berkeley Heights, which are 3 towns in New Jersey. And at that point, we didn't have any reporters, we didn't have any columnists, we didn't have any salespeople, we didn't have any advertising, and we didn't have any readers. So people were kind of thought I was kind of nuts when I quit my job to do it full time, particularly in this economy. But that's what we did. And basically, over that course of time, we started hiring on reporters, and we started bringing on, getting a lot of readership. And fast forward now, basically, about 16 months, and we now had over 400,000 absolute unique users come to the site last year. We're now in 14 towns. We get about 50,000 unique visitors a month. We have a newsletter subscriber base. I mean, it's a free subscription of over 6,000. We have over 200 paid freelance reporters on staff. And interesting fact, 30% of our users access the site through mobile devices. When we first launched, it was about 10%. So that number has increased quite a bit. And about 30% of our readers are referred through search engines. One of the things I think that's important about the Alternative Press is we have advisory boards in all of our towns composed of business and community leaders who act as kind of ambassadors for the site. And people that really have their ear to the ground, who are able to communicate with residents and get the word out about what we're trying to do. We were actually the first online newspaper in New Jersey to be accredited by the New Jersey Press Association. And it's interesting because I was a reporter in high school, in college, and in law school, but I didn't go to journalism school. And I'm always the person on the panels who's always defending journalistic integrity and talking about how we need to pay all of our journalists. I was on a panel with an executive, not at AOL or anything, but a different major media corporation, having this argument about why it's necessary to pay journalists. But we adhere to all journalistic principles, and our site continues to grow in hits and influence. As I talked about, we have 14 towns currently on the site, and I wanted to talk about a couple of them in particular. And we also have 10 sections. We have 10 statewide sections for everything from arts and entertainment to food and wine to health and wellness. For our town sections, we cover everything from town council to high school sports to events and everything in between. The site also offers a business directory, a community calendar, free classifieds, photos, videos, columnists, and guest columns, and even real estate listings. In terms of our towns, though, we have, I guess, two unique things I wanted to talk about. One is that just last week, we actually launched in South Orange and Maplewood, New Jersey, in partnership with Seton Hall University, and we're really excited about it. And it's kind of a first in New Jersey, and perhaps first in the country kind of partnership, because advanced reporting students from Seton Hall University are our beat reporters in South Orange and Maplewood, and a journalism professor from Seton Hall is the metro editor for South Orange and Maplewood, which is pretty exciting. And what we view this as is it's just really a win-win for everybody. One, it creates really good town-gown relations. It brings Seton Hall students into downtown so that they're shopping and shopping local, which is a really important aspect of the alternative press and something that we really advocate. And residents of South Orange and Maplewood now get to see Seton Hall students doing something really positive in the community and making a difference. And so we're really excited about that. The second model that we launched a couple of months ago is with the not-for-profit, the Center for Civic Responsibility. We launched with them in Paterson, New Jersey, and we're in the process of launching with them in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And in that situation, basically, they licensed the site from us to launch in Paterson first to bring hyperlocal news to underrepresented areas of New Jersey. Lower income areas where big media companies really aren't going to go. Paterson is a good example of that, and they hired on former Star Ledger reporters to be the editors for Paterson and New Brunswick, and it's a really great model. And basically the revenue that comes in from those pages goes to help fund the not-for-profit and in their activities. So that's a second model that we're currently working on. We're in discussions with a number of organizations and individuals regarding other models that we're going to be bringing out over the next 6 to 12 months. In terms of our site, our projected growth rate over the next 3 years is 60%. As you see right now, we're in 14 towns, of which we operate now 10 of those towns, and 4 of them are through either licenses or partnerships. By 2013, we'll be operating, we project, a little over 35 towns, and we'll have, between the licensed towns and the partnership towns, we're going to have another about 35 towns. And the licensing of these town pages will also take place to local newspapers. A lot of local newspapers have terrible online sites. Some don't have online sites at all. And so they can come on board with us, with our platform, and have their own newspaper brought online with all the technology that we have for a fraction of the cost that it would cost them to start their own online newspaper or to even improve their online news site. And also the work that we're doing with the not-for-profit, we plan to expand with other not-for-profits in New Jersey, as well as more work with that not-for-profit. As many of you guys know, US online ad spending is projected to increase. This is from eMarketer, but Burrell Associates also has come out with studies recently showing that US online ad spending is going to dramatically increase. They're projecting from about $25 billion right now to over $35 billion by 2013. In terms of US local online ad spending, that's also taking a significant jump from about $4 billion back in 2008. Currently, it's about $6.5 billion to almost $8 billion by 2011 right now. In terms of, yes? Yeah, local online ad spending. Online ad spending. Yeah, so basically that's, the New York Times, et cetera. Yeah, yeah, and, Facebook and, yeah. In terms of projected growth of advertising contract, this is for the alternative press. I know a lot of people here tonight want to talk about numbers and talk about business and models, so I wanted to kind of go in depth about this. Our average annual advertising contract is about $2,500. We have currently about 6 advertisers per town over the 14 towns, and we have an 80% renewal rate from 2009 to 2010. So basically what you're looking at is, our projection is that we're going to have well over 200 advertisers by 2013, of which slightly under 100 are going to be new advertisers by 2013. In terms of sales and profit projections, we expect our sales to grow by more than $100,000 annually with a consistent profit margin of 25%. That's what we're seeing year over year. So basically, by 2013, we're projecting, just if we stay in the current 14 towns, that we're going to be over $500,000 in annual revenue, and that in terms of operating costs, we're going to hover around $400,000, and we're going to have a profit of over $100,000. Wanted to do a little comparison here, and I apologize because I used the 3 million unique users figure that Patch put out a couple months ago. I hadn't realized it went up to 4.3, but you get the sense of what I'm trying to talk about here. We spent about $170,000 on this past year, got about 50,000 unique users per month, equates to about 3,500 unique users per town over the 14 towns. So our cost is basically about a quarter. And when you look at what Patch is doing, they spent $50 million approximately in 2010 for about 3 million, now 4 million unique users, which figures into about 3,750 in terms of unique users per town at 800 sites per town. So they're spending about $1.39 per unique user. So basically, we spent a quarter of what Patch did to reach basically the same number of people. One of the things I wanted to stress is that the way that we're doing this is through creativity, flexibility, and fiscal efficiency. We're continuing to grow while providing truly hyperlocal news written by and read by locals who really know their towns. And I just wanted to close with that, we view ourselves as the David to AOL's Patch.com Goliath. We're the only profitable hyperlocal here today, and our business model works. Thank you.
If you multiply Michael's business by 1,000, you'll start to understand why we think it's so important to scale fast. The $50 million for 2010 was an investment in this year, next year. So you'll start to see those costs per users go down. But yeah, I love the math. I think Michael did a good job of showing why this is a real business. And if you take it to 1,000, to 2,000, 3,000, then you have something the size of Groupon, Facebook, Google, and beyond.
I'm Camilla Cho, Vice President of Business Development for Outside In. Apologies that Mark couldn't be here. He was really, really busy, so I'm going to try my best to substitute in for him at the very last minute. So you guys have heard a lot about this focus on hyperlocal with a lot of emphasis on efficiency and creating scalable models. And so with the publisher's desire to cover hyperlocal efficiently and the difficulties and challenges a lot of local publishers face, at Outside In, we definitely see a big need for technology and for solutions for publishers to help them make things efficient and scalable. So what we do is we provide curation products and solutions to make going hyperlocal a lot easier for hundreds of local publishers all over the country. So we are a hyperlocal aggregator of all sorts of different content. We are aggregating, organizing, and distributing all of this content. So our goal is pretty simple. Create and deliver editorial and advertising opportunities for every 57,800 plus neighborhoods across the USA. So how do we go about doing that? Kind of wrapped up in this visual model we have built out here. We start at the top in terms of where do we find content. We find content from 3 primary sources, 3 primary buckets. We have a small content team internally. We are a tiny but mighty team of 20 people, and we have a few people internally always making sure we have all the latest content in our content database. We also have tons of different publisher partners that are submitting their feeds, their RSS feeds, for us to aggregate and organize into neighborhoods. And then we also have a huge blogger community as well. That's kind of how Outside In got started, with aggregating thousands of local bloggers. So a lot of bloggers come to us directly, and they are submitting their content so it could be seen and distributed to major publisher websites like the Chicago Tribune or CNN.com. So from those three buckets, we're collecting all sorts of different types of content. Hyperlocal is not just news. It means Twitter and social data, as well as a lot of vertical and municipal data out there. So we have feeds from over 65,000 unique feeds right now. That content database continues to just grow and grow. We're covering basically every single mainstream news site, so every newspaper company out there, every local TV station company, we have all of their feeds in our database. We have thousands and thousands of local blogger content. We're also parsing Twitter data as well. All the geotagged Twitter data is also coming into the stream. And whenever possible, we're also collecting vertical and municipal data. So that's a lot of content. What we have built is an algorithm to go through all of these feeds, story by story, tweet by tweet, blog post by blog post, article by article, to algorithmically determine which geographic location it should be associated with. And so we are organizing into neighborhoods, place, whether it's a park, a school, a building, and we're also attaching a ton of other metadata, whether it's topic data, keyword data, category data. So you could pull up a specific piece of content, and we can tell you that this story is about this specific neighborhood within this city, within this borough, within this zip code, and it's about this specific place or address related to various different topics and categories. So we're doing that all algorithmically. So with each piece of content that gets geotagged, we're distributing all of that content back out. And so we're distributing it across a lot of different end users. We do have a core site at outside.in, kind of our testing grounds, if you will, for us to do a lot of testing. But most of our business is actually on the outside and for publisher side. So we work with over 100 different local media companies, providing them with tools, APIs, dashboards, and white label portals for them to get access to all of this content and create a custom local experience that they want on their own site. And so the publishers can use our hosted sites, which is basically a white label portal for each neighborhood in your market. And then we also have an API for developers to take advantage of to slice and dice the content database in a lot of different ways. And then powering all of that is a curation dashboard, which has been in the market for about a year and a half now. The curation dashboard makes it really easy for publishers to curate all this content. So if you want certain sources in there, great, select those. If you want to suppress certain ones, whether it's your competitors' feeds or whether it's bloggers that you determine is not worthy of being on your site, we make that all very easy to do through a curation dashboard. So some of our publisher partners are featured here. So as you can see, we work with a lot of different local media publishers to help them power their hyperlocal experience on their websites and their mobile apps. So in terms of the industry, this is probably not going to be new to most of you at this point, but we see a lot of opportunity in hyperlocal, and we think the time is now. There's no other better time. Local content has really exploded, whether it is you tweeting from a specific restaurant, taking a picture of a plane landing on the Hudson. The definition of content has grown quite a bit, and there's a lot of content to be had out there. We could question the validity of it. We could question the journalistic integrity and the quality of it, but there's tons of content. And we believe that there is definitely a need for some organization and some curation on top of all that content. In terms of the audience, the users out there, there is an expectation, especially with the explosion in location-based services and all of your mobile phones being GPS enabled, there's definitely an expectation to deliver local, relevant content. And so we think that's also fueling the growth of hyperlocal. And then, as we've heard a lot in the press these days about the Groupons of the world, there's a lot of local advertisers coming online, and they're finding success, and they're also looking for hyperlocal quality inventory to put their advertisements against. So we see this as a big, big area where there could be very strong revenue potential, as we saw in Michael's slides just now. And traditional local incumbents are challenged. So there's a lot of opportunity for new entrants to come into the market, cover a new niche, serve to a newer audience via different apps, via different channels, and we think there's a lot of opportunities for the independent upstarts to come and find success. Making money in local is hard, as we all know. So we are just starting to work with publishers around revenue monetization on top of content. So in the very similar way that we are aggregating content and organizing and distributing all of that content, we're kind of doing the same with local ad network feeds as well. And so some of the challenge that we've seen is the local ad market is evolving very quickly. A lot of publishers just don't have the time nor resources to stay on top of all of the dynamics and all of the changes going on. And some of it's very, very complicated. It's also a highly fragmented market, and it is very difficult to achieve scale at the hyperlocal level. And so to address this, we're also working with publishers very much in the early stages right now, but we are starting to work with them on a local monetization solution and really focusing on aggregating and optimizing this fragment to local sources of ad networks out there. We're also talking to some national advertisers that are targeting local audiences and addressing the local publishers' needs. We work with tons of publisher partners, and when we help them address their content needs, the next set of questions is, okay, how do we monetize this? And so we see that there is a need for us to actually help with monetization, and we think the aggregate, organize, and distribute model could also be applied to the advertising world. Just wanted to end with showing our site. I'm just gonna go to a specific neighborhood here, which is the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And as you can see, this is just an example of the types of content we are aggregating. So you'll see here on the headlines in the first column here, you'll see headlines coming from various different mainstream news sources, as well as some of the more independent ones. You'll see blog posts separated out on the right side as well. As you can see, just for the Upper East Side, just within the last 10 hours or less, there's a lot of content going through. And obviously this is on the outside and core site. For on a publisher site, you could curate all of this. So for instance, if you didn't want anything coming from the Gothamist, you could suppress that. You could suppress specific stories. It's very easy to do via a curation dashboard. We're also starting to feature updates. A lot of publishers are asking for tweets as a great complement to kind of the more traditional news headlines. So we're also parsing and geotagging tweets as well.
Let me ask the first question. How do you guys sell this thing? How do you get ads? Who's your Dwight Schrute? Yeah, all three of you, yeah.
You want to start, Tim, or?
We don't. The answer is that we don't. If somebody wants to buy an ad, they can. It's not something that we market for the reason that I think you, Stephen, alluded to at the beginning. The cost of acquiring advertising at this level is one that stymies the New York Times, which is not set up to do that.
So at Patch, we look at the world in three buckets of advertisers. There's the local, the small business owner in a community, which are vital constituents for Patch, so first priority. Second is the regional local, so that's the college, the hospital, the major car dealer or furniture dealer. And the third is the national brand that wants a very local presence. So an example would be Bank of America, that wants their local branch to really be the bank in town where everyone knows the bank manager and there's events happening there and things like that. So the way we handle it in terms of sales is we have we're just in the process of building actually a on the street sales force that mirrors in a lot of ways our editorial team. And we hire local ad managers who act as evangelists for the site and also go out and sell our advertising products. And then on the regional and national level, that's one of the ways that we partner with AOL. AOL has great relationships with some of the largest brands in the world. And the demand for Patch as a local solution has been fantastic so far.
Thanks. Michael?
Yeah, for the alternative press, we have commission-only sales people in a number of our towns. These people are local residents in that town who are very active in the town, and they've done a fantastic job. And in addition to them, then the rest of us also sell advertising, like myself, and we basically speak to local businesses. And you know, the case is really compelling. It's a really compelling case to make to local businesses why they should be advertising online. So far, it's worked for us.
Okay, questions out here. Oh my God.
My name's Leila DeKretzer. I'm the publisher of DNAinfo.com. We cover Manhattan local news. We are, at the end of the month, we'll have 1.5 million visitors a month. So which brings me to the question of, one of the earlier slides was content and then sales. We very much in our organisation focused on paying for content, professional journalists. It built an audience. We believe we have quite a loyal audience in those neighbourhoods, and now we're selling to them. Is this what you guys have tried to do? Because the numbers don't seem to say that. Or are you putting in the sales and then believe you can build your audience separately? Because in order to really sell that advertising effectively, you are going to need a very, very, very loyal audience in those areas that you're covering.
Who wants to take that?
Is that for anyone specific, or? Oh, okay. Well, the way we set about building Patch was first phase, build the audience, build a product that people like, and become the local homepage for someone, not just on the site, but really reaching people wherever they want it, if they want it on their mobile device, and giving them, I mean, I like to boil it down to the 10 most important pieces of information that you need to know. If you're a mom on the go, taking your kids around to all the soccer practice and everything else that you have to do during the day, you can quickly jump on Patch and find out, oh, the deadline for my beach pass is tonight, as well as the hard news and the important things. So we spent the first year of our lifespan building that kind of audience connection. And the second part is, okay, how do we engage the local businesses to use Patch to reach those people in the same kind of way? If the 10 most important pieces of information are coming through to you on Patch, 3 of those should be that the car dealer has a 0% financing, the local restaurant has a 2-for-1 special, and the grocery store is offering beef at 50 cents a pound. I don't know, I made that up, but that kind of information is just as important. So what we're trying to do is engage the audience first, and then go out and leverage that audience and use our product to connect with them. The question was, are we selling display for branding, or are we selling direct drive to retail? And we're doing both. Some advertisers really want branding. The car dealership wants to get their name out there. What we think is most effective, and what I personally believe the future of local advertising is something more similar to, here is a actual deal that you should go take advantage of in a store, and get people to, first of all, it's useful information for the consumer, and it's actually going to drive the revenue needle for the advertiser, as opposed to just branding.
Michael, you want to add something to that real quick?
I just want to say, with us, we pay for everything that so when we get advertising in, we use it to fund our content. As advertising revenue increases, we put out more content, and we launch more towns and things like that. So I think, and that kind of goes back to the model that seems to be working for us, is slow and steady, but at the same time doing it in such a way that we are getting back as much cash as we're putting into it, so that we're able to fund our operations and continue to expand.
This is great. This is kind of like Jerry Springer, and if Michael and Warren would fight again, we could have like one of those shows.
We'll do anything to please the crowd. So.
Well, thanks for all of you for being here. My name's Andrew Humphrey. I'm an MIT alum from Detroit, Michigan. It's good to be here today. One of the things that a couple of you brought out, and was one of the concerns I had, are all 4 of you concerned about shortchanging the poor in poor communities in terms of news coverage. For example, Warren, if you're basing your news coverage on income of communities, doesn't that automatically eliminate poor communities? Or for example, Michael, you're already in affluent communities. If you use a lot of students, well, there are a lot of student volunteers from middle school all the way through higher education that are in poor communities. Have you thought about utilizing them and their resources. And Camila, if you're using bloggers and social media as part of your content, well, aren't you automatically missing out because of the digital divide? And those not only poor individuals or families who don't have the technological resources to reach the internet, do social media, but even poor infrastructures where schools and libraries are shutting down. So social media basically doesn't exist in those areas. And for all of you, if you're also partnering with local news stations or even larger media companies who you already admit don't want to serve hyperlocal or these communities in the first place, well, how are they useful to you when it comes to serving the poor or poor communities?
It's absolutely true that when Patch launched, our algorithm led us to very similar affluent communities. It's not that it wasn't by design. We were a startup that needed to make sure that our model was going to be successful, so we went to the most commercially appealing markets first. But at this point, Patch is much more than that, and we really believe that it should be and could be useful and helpful anywhere and everywhere, and probably even more so in communities that are ignored or underserved by traditional media. So we're taking a lot of steps to get there. We launched the Patch.org Foundation to be able to initiate conversations with community foundations in poor and underserved communities. We've had a lot of great conversations. Hopefully we'll be able to do a deal soon to get some of those sites live. We're working with the City University of New York to cover Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, which was not one that would show up on our algorithm, but we felt like it was important to cover, and it would be an interesting way to start off that kind of the idea of trying a neighborhood that traditionally doesn't get a lot of coverage compared to its neighbors like Park Slope. So we are very aware of that. It's something that we want to change about Patch, and you should see that happening more and more this year and next.
Anybody else wanted to?
Yeah, I think that's a great point and great question. I think in terms of outside in, we are not focused or prioritizing any neighborhoods or towns or anything like that, but we definitely are all very passionate internally about local bloggers, and so we actually have our community manager here, Esther Brown. She is always outreaching to the blogger community, and we have a series on our website called Bloggers We Love, where we're profiling bloggers we feel are covering their neighborhoods really well, hoping to inspire other folks to blog about their neighborhoods, giving out tips, best practices, how do you get the word out there, how do you get eyeballs, how do you get users to come back. And we're hoping that by sharing some of this with a bigger community, that we are sparking more people to blog no matter where they are in the country.
I think what we're doing in terms of working with the not-for-profit in Paterson and New Brunswick, I think is really one of the best ways to do this. And I'm looking for more such opportunities like that, whether it's through licensing, whether it's through partnerships with not-for-profits, with universities, to bring the alternative press to more distressed areas. I mean, when I was 21, I ran for mayor of New Brunswick, and I ran as an independent. And I'll never forget that, because what I learned there was really important, and the fact that now that where we are in terms of where I live, I don't forget where I come from and what I've seen, and I want to bring the site to all areas of the state.
Jim used a very interesting phrase. Called this what the Times was doing is a journey of discovery, and I think we're all on a major journey of discovery with many things that are going on, and they're happening very fast. And what one of the challenges that you face in attempting to build successful business models is I'd like to hear from each of you on the subject of paying writers, including bloggers.
I think that the marketplace ought to function, and that if people only will write where they're paid, then they should only write for places that pay them. And if people are attracted to an audience, and that compensates them, that's another way to compensate them. And I think that there are no hard and fast rules about this. The amount of content being created by people. Now, Clay Shirky charges for copies of his book about the amount of content that's being created for free, but there's an awful lot of content being created for free, and there are many people who would be motivated by getting a bigger audience for their content. So that might be another way to compensate them if the money isn't there.
I agree with Jim completely, actually. I think that, in my experience, for us at Patch, we believe in paying for journalism. We believe that there's certain types of news that need a professional, someone who's been trained in the science of journalism, and we practice that. So that's important. I also think that, as Jim said, there are people who are motivated to get their words out for other reasons, just to get a larger audience. And our goal at Patch is to do both, to pay for high-quality journalism and to provide a platform for people who just want to get their views out publicly.
Great. Thank you. I appreciated the hyperlocal smackdown earlier. I thought that was very refreshing. Spoke to a couple of hyperlocal journalists earlier today and tried to get them to come here. And they said that basically that this was the Whole Foods of hyperlocal journalism. And they voiced some concern about the integrity of the editorial staff maintaining a higher level while also answering, of course, to the almighty dollar. So looking for yourselves, what do you see as your greater mission in terms of maintaining that integrity and being truly hyperlocal while also trying to build a business model in a very difficult landscape?
I don't understand the question. What is the conundrum that you're posing?
Well, basically, the hyperlocal journalists I spoke to felt that you really weren't hyperlocal, that you were basically in a business model that was not answering to Brooklyn Vegan, E.B. Grieve, some of these truly hardcore. They said the comparison between Whole Foods and a local farmer. So they were wondering what you were doing to really sort of draw that true hyperlocal experience in, while at the same time answering to the advertising dollars, and if that was somehow tainting or affecting your journalistic profile.
There is no way that our hyperlocal effort could be accused of being tainted by advertising. Although, interestingly, you mentioned, I think some of the sites you mentioned, when NYU, when we said that we were going to be in partnership with NYU in an East Village website, there was concern that we would, that some kind of plantation thing was going to be taking place. I think that, yes, that was the one that was employed. So I think that if the New York Times in this setting can help bring an audience to sites like E.V. Grieve, or the many, extremely good sites in Brooklyn that our local in Fort Greene links to, then we're doing an honorable thing.
And then bouncing over to some of the larger global business models that you're looking for. It comes into question when people start to look at, the AOL family and Huffington Post, and you're getting an awful lot more attention than you were getting before. So as a result, in looking at sort of that paradigm between Whole Foods or real food, where do you see yourself landing?
Yeah, from the Patch perspective, I think I try to take it to the level of the resident of a town, and if we're providing a service that they really need and want, and if there really was a void there that we're filling. So far, the answer has been yes. There has been a void, and yes, the market is showing us that it's being filled. So we feel good about that. In terms of the local connection, it's always going to be hard for a national company to claim that they're local. What we strongly believe is that the journalists who make the decisions about the content that is on the site, make the editorial decisions, write about, decide what's most important every day, live there, work there. We are a support organization back in New York, providing the platform and guidelines and best practices and data and all that other good stuff. But really, we like to think of what we're doing as building infrastructure for towns that then can be used by the journalists who live there and write and work there every day, as well as organizations and people who want to voice their opinion on virtually anything.
Another question.
Hi, everyone. My question is directed concerning the college students, how you were talking about your involvement. Now, I know that a lot of you said that you had utilized them either through internship programs or as local bloggers. And I know in your case for the alternative press, you had said how you're using them for some of the inner city endeavors. But I was wondering, have any of you ever explored possibilities of maybe either creating subpages or separate hyperlocal projects to kind of hone in on the college communities? Because I know I'm from Jersey City, and it's not your quote-unquote college town, but I know that a lot of students could flock to something like this. And I was just wondering if that's one avenue that you've explored yet.
So college kids, what do you think? Larry, do my Larry King
Yes,
now.
we have explored it. That's part of our Patch U program. So far, we have students working mainly on regular patch sites, but we are hoping to launch patches on college campuses as soon as we can. So it's something we're interested in. I don't know if you're...
Yeah, I mean, we're also interested in doing that kind of thing. And just to go back to the other question, the alternative press, we don't have an editorial page. People can write letters to the editor, they can write guest columns, but you'll never hear from the newspaper, from me, how to vote or what to think about things, which I think is really important. We also don't allow comments on the site, anonymous comments on the site. People have to give their name and they have to write a letter to the editor or a guest column. The other thing I wanted to mention is in terms of the business question from before, just to cycle back to that. I'm in the Rotary in Berkeley Heights, and we can't get a meeting announcement in the local paper without paying $200, not Patch, the hard copy newspaper. When my wife and I started this, we said, you know what, businesses, organizations, residents should be able to get their news and information published without somebody having a handout asking for money. And so that's a really important thing with us. Advertising does not impact our editorial decisions or anything like that. And that's a really important principle to us.
Back here.
About 30% of Americans don't speak English at home, and they're very grouped in different neighborhoods. How are you addressing large Middle Eastern communities in Detroit or Filipino communities in Southern California, and et cetera, et cetera?
You just say you don't when we move on. Can't do everything. You're barely making money now.
I think that's the New York Times has appears in translation in many places around the world, and I know that there is some discussion here about providing a Spanish language service in the United States, but we're not going to tackle immediately the hyperlocal issue. I have great faith in the people at Google that they're going to get that translate thing to work, and I think it's hugely important. There are also, there are wiki translate efforts that are happening on multiple fronts, and if that works, I think a lot of content can get translated. But people in their own communities are going to need to cover themselves too.
Yeah, but it's not just the content and the language, it's how they view the world, what issues are important.
That's right, and I think that these platforms that are being built can facilitate people. I have a friend who was a colleague at the Los Angeles Times who publishes eastsiderla.com. It's a really good hyperlocal site in Boyle Heights. Jesus Sanchez grew up there, and he is out there beating the bushes for news from his community's perspective because, WordPress and Blogger make that possible today.
Hello, I want to take it into international perspective. So we have been talking about technological companies, but how about those local regional hard paper publishers? For instance, Johnston Press in the UK, who own over 300 papers, but have been closing down each of their regional newspapers. What would your recommendation be for them to kind of make a jump from kind of hard papers to kind of hyperlocal news online, and leveraging the ecosystem of local journalists, which they've had on the ground for, let's say, over 200 years?
Right. Well, as a former newspaper guy myself, we looked carefully at newspaper profit and loss statements, and we looked at them trended over years, and we saw that our model would need to address the future of those papers. And the example you gave of newspapers in the UK shutting down is a tragic but good example. So my recommendation would be to look at something like what we're doing, where we've created a model where we can operate at 4.1% of the cost of a daily newspaper in a market the same size as the markets we're in on average at Patch. So I would say to the publisher of that group, look at your assets, look at the things that you can do without, look what you can use technology for, and accomplish the same or more and get in the hands of more people at 4.1% of the cost.
Wow, 4.1%. That's a heck of a number.
Ted Berger with American Towns. I was just at the Suburban Newspapers Association conference, and one of the best received presentations was by Deseret News CEO, who said that if we are going to have effective local news, we are all, as in the newspaper industry, going to have to lower our costs in the things that aren't so critical in order to be able to afford the essential elements of journalism. I've talked to all of you and heard very similar things to that, but I wonder if you could each kind of give your take on that from where your business sits. And it strikes me that maybe where journalism is, where traditional media, traditional newspapers are, and where you are, maybe isn't so different.
First of all, hi, good to see you. I would say from our perspective at Patch, we are adamant that we're not trying to solve the journalism problem as a whole. That's Jim's job. We are focused solely on the problem that exists in the community right around you. So, you know, there's a worrisome trend in global news coverage. There's a worrisome trend in national news coverage. As much as we would love to fix it, we're trying to fix the problem that exists when you don't know the information about making a voting decision in your small town in the Midwest. So that's where we stand on that.
Somebody mentioned Burrell. Burrell is having an event next week here in the city, and Clayton Christensen is speaking at it. And I think anybody who's been a publisher or an editor at a metropolitan newspaper or a local chain, you know, knows what it's like when your business explodes underneath you, and the newspaper industry, to say the very obvious thing, where it was making disproportionate profits for years and got fat and happy. Nobody's fat anymore, and some places are learning how to run on lean, and some places can't get there. But that's why capital markets exist to fund new things. I'll revert back to where I started. We have to have reporting, and we have to figure out how to pay for reporting. And if communities determine that they don't value that, I guess we'll see. I suspect the market will respond to that.
I mean, I think a lot of you might have heard Jeff Jarvis quoting this quite often, but, you know, do what you do best and link to the rest. I mean, that's something that's resonated with me ever since I started at Outside In. And, you know, I talked to hundreds of local publishers of all sizes all across the country, and a lot of them are struggling to try to do everything on their own. And that includes covering every neighborhood in their market, selling locally in all of those markets and neighborhoods, as well as moving to the latest and best CMS, building a new iPhone app. There's a lot of stuff to do to try to catch up, and I think the focus on what newspapers do best, which is reporting, editorial curation, has been kind of taken off focus. And so at Outside In, we try to provide some tools to help with getting back to the focus of what they do best.
This question is for Warren.
Hi.
How do you anticipate Arianna Huffington's arrival is going to affect your business and editorial model?
Well, I've been working on my Greek, which is not going that well.
You ever worked for a woman before?
No, we're excited. So the Huffington Post has done something remarkable with, you know, bringing together professional journalism and also providing reach and voice for a lot of bloggers out there. How Patch will work with the Huffington Post is yet to be determined. I think we're going to continue on our path of serving communities the way we serve communities, and whatever lessons we can learn from the Huffington Post. I think more on sort of they do social very well. They are very good at making sure the content goes viral. There's a lot of lessons that could be shared probably between us. One thing that we're adamant about is that Patch is, as Michael was saying about the alternative press, Patch does not have an opinion. Patch does not take a side on any issue. It's a platform for equal representation of opinion on any issue, and we're going to stay true to that forever. So we're excited to be working with the Huffington Post and the really smart people that work there. I think they have some great technology. I think Ariana has a great vision for media in general. Politically, we are straight down the middle and don't take a side. Does that answer your question? Oh, great.
It's a question to Michael and Warren. I'm interested in how you guys are compensating a news provider, i.e. journalists. What is the optimal pay for performance compensation for journalists? Because I know, newsrooms are sort of fortress in the name of journalism, which is very precious, but, you see a lot of, work to do, cutting those costs.
Yeah, well, at the Alternative Press, we pay all of our journalists. We pay them per story based on experience. Our pay range goes from $30 a story up to about $55. And we also pay our columnists, but it works differently. We pay our columnists based on unique views. So it's basically we pay $25 for every 1,000 unique views that their column gets, which is higher than the standard that you get on these other, like Examiner and stuff like that. But that way we're paying for all of the original content that we're generating.
And our model is slightly different. We hire full-time employees to be our local editors, and we pay them a competitive base salary plus a bonus. And it's typically in the range that you would expect for a local or regional daily newspaper. 75% of our editors make the same or more than they did in their previous job, which gives you a sense of the range.
I was wondering how much of your business right now is coming from the mobile platform.
Anybody else?
Our answer to that is irrelevant to this discussion. It's large and growing. I mean, like many things that start from zero, it's very fast growing, and I think everybody understands that mobile, whether you define it as one of these or a tablet, is going to be immensely important.
Yeah, I would say that we're in the beginning stages of our mobile strategy. We have a lot in the works. So the usage right now is on the small side, but my opinion is that there's nothing more suited for local than mobile. And we want to reach people wherever they are and wherever they want it. So it's a big product priority for us right now to make sure we have patch content anywhere and everywhere.
Yeah, and just for us, it increased from about 10% our first year to about 30% last year.
Yeah, are there advertising technology products that you found particularly suited to the small business owners who are many of your advertisers who don't have access to agencies and don't necessarily have creative staff on board that can figure out how to create and build rich media products that might be available to much larger advertisers? Is there anything that your companies are developing or licensing or using that that would help?
Well, on our end, there's a few. So we found that in the average town that Patch is in, 50% of the small business owners don't even have websites. So we're kind of introducing them to the web and web advertising in a lot of senses. So we try to make it as easy as possible. We will design banner ads, and we have a design team to do that. But more likely, it's things like creating their directory page for them and enhancing it where it's got all the relevant information. We, at a very affordable cost, we provide a video profile, so a little commercial that we can make about a small business, something that they've never had before that is online and they can share it any way that they want. And then I would say any kind of structured ad that gets a direct response is the #1 thing that we're working on right now. So it's a call to action. It's getting somebody a deal in their hand that will get somebody into the store. It might not have the pretty picture that the local advertiser tends to want, but what it does is actually move the needle for them more on a sales basis. So.
Yeah, and I think for us, it really comes down to customer service. So our marketing consultants, they put up people's press releases, they put up their business directory listings, they put up their calendar listings, and we also have independent graphic designers to design the ads for the businesses. Some of the businesses provide their own ads, and as long as it's to our specs, that's great, and we'll just put it up. But we really go the extra mile for customer service. We think that's really important.
Let me just mention a couple other things. If you're in this world and you're not familiar with a little company called Paper G, I would go to their website and check out their products. They're really, you know, I hate them because it's one of the CEO is 21, but they're really smart. And I think anybody getting into this has got to consider the role of Groupon, which has been mentioned many times here at Google and Facebook, and be thinking about those things. Are they platforms, competitors? What are they as you get into this?
The only thing I would add to that is that I think it's really important that everyone at this table and in the group who's in this business challenge the status quo, even though the status quo is not that old on the internet in terms of internet advertising, and also recognize that local is very different than national and global. We're not looking for clicks. We're not looking for conversions. We're looking for people to take an action. So at Patch, we're constantly trying to reinvent, you know, what internet advertising is all about locally.
So continuing on the mobile theme, as mobile becomes more a part of each of your businesses, how are you approaching advertisers and agencies and brands and convincing them that it's a viable platform on which to reach your readers?
My sense is that they're recognizing it. I mean, the New York Times deals with very large advertisers generally, again, not in the hyperlocal space. And, you know, they get it. And the bigger ones get it first, and then it's sort of, my sense is that it will trickle down.
Yeah, we don't have this yet, but I'll give you a taste of how I think I would sell it to a local advertiser. I think walking in with an iPhone and showing that the iPhone is geographic aware or location aware, it knows where you are, and showing them an app that shows a deal from their store to someone just because they happen to be walking or driving by it. That's pretty cool. And, you know, as more and more people start to use things like that, and there are a million of those out there, it's a fairly easy sell, I think. Yeah, I would agree. Okay.
At what point are any of the panelists considering video, audio as a hyperlocal media, or incorporating it?
We have lots of video on our sites, on our hyperlocal sites. It is so easy to create video on Vimeo or YouTube and to put it up there. You know, I think it takes more time to edit a story and make it effective, but it's there, and I think it's important to facilitate people's telling stories, however, whatever medium they want to do that in. It goes for audio clips as well.
We also have a lot of video, and we're adding more every day. I think the most recent is a Patchcast, we're calling it, where it's a roundup of the daily, most important daily news items and events going on in the town.
Where did you get that idea?
Oh, is that something you do?
We have one called Timescast, but it's usually about Iraq or something.
That pesky English language, there's only so many words to pick from. So we do that, and then as I was mentioning, we have the commercial videos too. So business on their directory page on Patch can pay to have a video profile created about them.
We're aggregating video feeds as well whenever it's possible from all of the different content sources. I think video is definitely a huge area for hyperlocal, and we haven't seen in terms of volume of content coming through all that much just yet in terms of video and audio, but definitely an area for growth and lots of opportunities there.
And video is definitely, I think, the largest growing both usage and advertising category online, if I'm quoting my stats right, but yeah.
Okay, let's knock it off there. So I've heard lots of opportunity here. If you have an Arabic or Spanish language site with a passionate editor and a Dwight Schrute kind of salesperson, world's your oyster. Let's thank our panelists here for a great shot.